Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's live stream. This is week 3 of a 10-week series on how the narrative is changing for classical music, changing for the performing arts, changing for arts and culture. And my name is Aubrey Bergauer, if I haven't met you yet. So welcome, whether you are joining us now live or whether you are watching this online later. So glad to have you here. This is part of the LinkedIn Accelerator program, this whole series. This is a program that LinkedIn brought on different creators to be able to bring more content. They are promoting and just underwriting this content for the business side of the arts. So a big thank you to LinkedIn for just really making it possible to bring this content in this series to you. Today's topic, as I said, it's week 3 of 10. Today's topic is customer retention. This is a topic that is more urgent now than ever before. And what I'm hearing, this is over the last 5.5 years, I've been creating content. What I'm hearing now is that ticket sales are being measured against pre-pandemic levels, right? We've all heard that at our various organizations. And that sentiment is a measure of getting audiences back. This idea of getting our audiences back and caring about that, prioritizing that, is the biggest shift I have seen from talking about patron acquisition to patron retention. Acquisition has been at the forefront for as long as I can remember being in this business, which is going close to 20 years now at this point, hard to believe. But the idea that now the shift is happening toward a focus more on retention really is music to my ears, pardon the pun. But it really is part of the dialogue now. And that is a change for the better, hence why we're talking about it in this series. So last week, if you joined us, you heard the statistic, 90% of first-time attendees at symphony orchestras never come back again. We talked about that last week when we talked about the patron experience. That's also a statistic that clearly indicates a retention problem. Another alarming statistic that I wanted to share today is that of first-year subscribers, first-year season ticket holders, again, this is for symphony orchestras, about 50% of all of those first-time season ticket holders do not renew that subscription, do not come back. This is a problem because when we're talking about retention and an audience journey, who are our top prospects for donors eventually? All the data shows subscribers. So if we're losing half of our subscribers, our new subscribers every year, that is choking up the pipeline. Combine that with 9 out of 10 newcomers, first-time ticket buyers, single ticket buyers not returning, and the entire pipeline is just really being choked up. So put a pin in that because we're going to revisit that later in this conversation as we get into this idea of retention. If you don't know me and haven't followed my work, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. I am known for a few things. One of them is this topic of retention. I developed the long haul model when I was executive director of the California Symphony from 2014 to 2019, led that organization for 5 years. And we really doubled down on this idea of audience retention, seeing that there is money on the table. So that's just the quick introduction here for me. And along the way, I share this because along the way, as I have become obsessed with retention, obsessed with freeing up that pipeline, I came across the blog of Duolingo. And if you know about Duolingo, great. Maybe put a comment in the chat, raise your hand at your desk, at home, wherever you are. Duolingo, if you don't know who they are, that's okay too. They are a language learning app. And they put out incredible, interesting content on their blog, which is information about their work, their own tests, like really a peek behind the curtain. And they do all sorts of different tests in order to make for a better experience, user experience, so that they can keep and retain their users. And there is one post in particular that I really loved about what they did to focus on this issue of retention. So we're going to get into that today. We were going to be joined by one of their product managers who worked on this very problem. That's now not able to happen. I'll spare you the details. So that means you get me for the whole time today, for the half hour we're together. And I'm going to share this case study with you. And that also means that there's a little bit more time where I can work in some of what we did at the California Symphony and show in comparison how these two approaches to retention played out for these different organizations. I'll try to comment on what I'm seeing from other clients I'm working with as well along the way. So if you're watching this, whether it's live or online later, and you think this topic of retention would be valuable to others, please give it a share it in your feeds. That is important to getting the word out, important to sharing with the field how this topic and this mind shift is happening. So if you're like what you're hearing, please, that would be really awesome if you could share it. Give it a like, and also use the chat, use the comments here, and leave your questions, share your thoughts, engage, whatever you want to do. I'll try to keep an eye on the chat here in my window. And right now, I'm going to share my screen and then circle back on the chat, hit any questions I see in there. So that's the plan for our time today. So let me get this screen share going. Okay, you should be able to see that. If somebody doesn't see this, please say something in the chat so I know it's not working. But for now, I'm not seeing anything from you all, so I'm going to assume this screen share is coming through just fine. You should be looking at an iceberg. So before we get to retention, let's talk about the iceberg that is our databases. This is really a model of a typical arts database, and what that means is, if for what you know about the iceberg, is what? That a very small portion of the iceberg is above water, right? That's what we know. Working. Thank you, Katrina. Okay, good. Very small portion of the iceberg is above water. So what that means, when I apply this analogy to our databases, it means our active patrons are that part above water. Active patrons means our current donors. They're active. That's about 4% of an average database. It means about 6% of active patrons are those first-time buyers in a given year, those new attendees. And then the other 7% that's above water is all the other active accounts. So that means our subscribers, our subscribers, non-donors, our lapsed donors will still count lapsed for up to 3 years in this exercise. So they're lapsed. We're trying to get them to renew. We're going to come back to that as we talk about retention. Our regular ticket buyers, our multi-buyers, all of those, anybody who has any kind of activity in their account within the last 3 years, that's that portion above water. Now, the California Symphony database looked like this. A lot of other clients I've worked with over the last 3 years now almost have looked like this. And the vast majority, what this means for everybody I've seen so far, is that the vast majority of our databases are that part below water, that part of the iceberg under water, inactive accounts. So you can run the numbers for your organization if you want, see how you compare to this analogy here. Even if your numbers don't look exactly like this, what the point is that those first-time buyers, and we're going to come back to subscribers in a moment, but those first-time buyers are the entry point from which all the other relationships develop. They are the inflection point where they make a choose your own adventure choice. Am I going to come back again, or am I going to go underwater and become inactive? And as we've said, retaining those buyers matters because 90% of them choose to go straight underwater to becoming inactive. They never, ever come back. If you watched last week, we said that statistic has been true for the last 10 years, hasn't really changed much over that time. Now, I mentioned at the top, another important statistic is that 50% of our first-time subscribers don't renew. They also go to becoming inactive, dead in the water to us. So we say we need new audiences. That's the old narrative. We said this a lot in our business, but the reality is now, as we're talking about getting our patrons back, how do we get those subscribers to come back this season as we've come off of this long hiatus? That's the shift. That's the giant shift in the narrative, which is so good. So if we don't get this pipeline flowing, we have no future because we cannot grow. Thank goodness we're changing our tune. Another music pun. So again, most organizations now are not talking to me about getting new people. They are talking about getting our patrons back. This is good news. Okay, enter Duolingo to this. Duolingo is a business with a similar problem, or had a similar problem, I should say. Duolingo, I'll share just a little bit more. Not only are they an education app, they are the most popular language learning app in the world. Duolingo has over 500 million total users from every single country across the globe. They are the singular most downloaded education app on iPhone and on Android. Okay, this is a massive reach that they have. Yet, this is where the similarities begin. Of those 500 million customers, only 40 million of them are active monthly users, that part of the iceberg above water. That's less than 1%. So literally the tip of the iceberg, less than 1% of their giant user base is actually active. Okay, similar iceberg problem. For Duolingo, just to define some vocabulary here, a user is defined as inactive, meaning dead in the water, after 30 days of inactivity on the app. That's how they define an inactive user. And that is because, as they say, being away from learning a language for a month, that is a major disruption to your language learning journey. Therefore, that's the threshold that they move an account to inactive. Okay. Duolingo also knew, as they were starting to dive into this problem, they knew that on any given day, 5% of their inactive users returned to the app. Okay. They literally call these people resurrected. Like I say, dead in the water, they literally call them resurrected when they come back to the app after being away for 30 days or more. In our industry, in the arts, we tend to say reactivated, not resurrected. For example, we reactivated a donor. I hear that vernacular a lot. Okay. So then as they were digging in, Duolingo found something very surprising to them. Even though these customers, these resurrected customers, returned to the app after their time away, you would think, and they thought this originally too, you would think that would be cause for celebration, right? 5% resurrected users every single day. That amounts, with their scale, amounts to 25 million customers coming back every single day. So again, you'd think this would be cause for celebration, but what they realized as they started digging in was that, in fact, those resurrected users were 20% less likely to then stick with it, continue to stick with it 7 days and 14 days later. So after a week or 2 weeks, they're dropping off again, is what they found, compared to a brand new customer. So in other words, a resurrected user didn't stay resurrected for long. They then realized through this that focusing on the early window of a new customer was more fruitful to them than trying to resurrect, reactivate, revive, whatever word you want to use, these past users. To say it differently, once they lost a newcomer, it proved very challenging to retain them over the long run. They knew that they had to find a way to get those first-time customers coming back again and again, forming a habit before they ever went cold. Does this make sense? Hopefully, yes. Okay, so digging further, Duolingo then discovered a significant part of the problem was user experience. So this starts to intersect, this conversation on retention starts to intersect what we talked about last week. UX research uncovered the frustrations their customers were feeling, and that helped them design for a better solution for retention. So let's look at it. If the solution, the desired outcome is to get the customer to come back, retain them, meaning coming back not from being resurrected, but sticking with it, developing that habit, coming back again and again. How we do that is we ask them about the experience. Okay, this is user experience research to restate what we talked about last week again. Okay, so jobs to be done theory is how we framed that last week. Okay, this is all right on the heels of that. So if you didn't see that session last week, you can go back. You can watch it and you're interested. You can look at it on my feed. I started a hashtag for this, hashtag the narrative is changing. You can click on it. It'll bring up all the videos in this series. Okay, as an aside. For now though, track with me as I read through what their research uncovered. And as I said, I worked in what we saw at the California Symphony 2 with similar UX research to start drawing some of these parallels. So let me read some of this to you. The frustration users were feeling was that they were overwhelmed when they opened the app. or when they visited the Symphony website. So at Duolingo, they got feedback such as a user saying, "Little did I know I was about to get hit by a rainbow." They were referencing the colorful and busy design of the app. At California Symphony, the overwhelming feeling was that there was terminology they were never taught in school. They said they do not know words like concerto or instrumentation. Somebody literally said, quote, "Insiders would know these things, but it seems like you might be able to engage people with more layman terms." Another frustration users were feeling among both organizations: too much upselling. So on the app, if you've ever used a Duolingo app or tried to learn a language, it's up your progress score. It used to be even more intense how much this was, this sort of gamification was pushed forward. Users said, "I'm not ready for that. I just want to practice for now." At the Symphony, too much upselling played out like this. We sent way too many follow-up solicitations, we learned. We asked them to buy more tickets. We asked them to immediately subscribe after they had come just one time. We asked them for donations on the next donation peel that it went out. So anybody who's heard me talk before has probably heard me talk about some of these same issues. They're not unique to the California Symphony. They tend to be true at every organization I've worked with or at as an employee or now as a consultant. Too much upselling is the message for both organizations. 3 out of 4 in this example here, mild shaming. Oh man, buckle up for this one. Okay, on Duolingo, what they found from this user research was the app load screen used to say something like 15 minutes a day can teach you a language. But what can 15 minutes of social media do? People said, "I don't like that. It's pretty, it's mild shaming." Didn't rub them the right way. At the Symphony, mild shaming looked like patrons shushing other patrons when somebody applauded at the quote unquote wrong time. Sidebar, I was giving or sharing this information with somebody else recently, and they said, "Aubrey, that's not mild shaming. That's just outright shaming." They're not wrong. Okay, patrons feeling shamed, don't like the experience. It hurts it hurts our ability to retain them. All right, fourth part of this example here, fourth finding, both organizations learned that assuming a greater understanding of the product, assumed that the user had a greater understanding of the product than they actually possessed. This is a big one for all of us. So at Duolingo, it played out as the user was being prompted after just a few lessons they were prompted by a splash screen that would come up and ask them to listen to their podcast. And the feedback that they heard was these users saying, "I just learned the word leche. No, I don't want to listen to your full podcast in Spanish." So, okay, assuming a much greater understanding of the product than the user actually possessed. At the Symphony, it played out like this. We heard literally from people in our focus group, is this piece going to be more fast-paced? Is this one going to be more romantic? We can't tell from the composer name alone. This was just when they were on the ticket overview page of our website. They don't know when they hear Beethoven or Rachmaninoff if that really means much about what that piece really sounds like. A lot of us working in this business for so long, we're so much more familiar with the product, with the art form. We instantly have ideas come to mind of what those pieces sound like. So again, big disconnect from what we were assuming a newcomer knows versus what they actually do know. One user at the California Symphony looked up our repertoire for the entire season on Wikipedia just to learn more of what it was about. Not everybody's going to do that research on their own. So, okay. This is what we learned. This is what both of those organizations found in their UX research, aiming to get more intel so that we could solve for better retention. Here are the results. Both Duolingo and the California Symphony made a lot of changes in response to all of that feedback. And I have several other clients doing that right now this season. We're hearing the feedback. Some of it is hard to hear, I know, making changes in response to it. So awesome. Narrative is changing. And for Duolingo, their results were statistically significant increases in new customer retention. So those brand new users, like we said, that was the goal, not focusing on resurrecting people, but keeping them engaged out of the gate. For their brand new users, they saw statistically significant increases in retention after 1 day, 7 days, and 14 days on the app. Awesome. Resurrecting users, therefore, became less of an issue because they were better retaining people right away out of the gate. Awesome. Okay. At the California Symphony, our audience nearly doubled over the next 4 years. Our first-timer retention increased to 30%. That's 3 times the industry average. So you heard me say it. I'll say it again. If 90% don't come back, that means 10% is the amount who do. We were consistently retaining about 30% of newcomers. Retaining meanings they would come back again within 12 months of their first visit. So again, 3x the industry average. Prioritizing the customer, prioritizing the experience is the first step toward retention, right? You see how last week's topic goes right into this week's topic, hopefully. This is a big lesson we can learn from our for-profit counterparts like the Duolingos of the world. And that means improving how much money we're making. That's what retention is all about. How are we serving more people, keeping those people in the fold, therefore bringing in the revenue we need to then fund the art better? How are we making those people eventually become repeat buyers, subscribers, and ultimately donors? So let me stop this screen share here. Okay. Oh, Bradley, so nice. What a nice comment. That's awesome. Okay. Back to my notes here. Okay, so what I want to do now, if there's any questions, I'm happy to take questions. If not, that's okay. Let me give you guys a second. As you're thinking, if you do have questions, I thought I would share just a little bit more about the long haul model. If you've been following me for a while, you've probably heard it before. If you're newer, here's the quick rundown. The idea is that if the desired behavior is retention, what does that look like for these different segments of our audience? So for our first timers, retention means come back again. I said at the California Symphony within 12 months, a return from your first visit, right? Returning within 12 months. That's retention for a first time buyer. If somebody is a multi-buyer, meaning they've come twice within a year, suddenly they're like at the next level, right? Next level of engagement. For that group, the end goal, the desired behavior is to get them ready for a small package subscription. For somebody who's a first-year subscriber, you heard me say half of those people don't renew. So for that group, the only goal is renew your subscription. Now, what that means is for all 3 of those groups, first-time buyers, multi-buyers, and new subscribers, we were not yet soliciting them for a donation. We waited until somebody was a second-year subscriber to begin that ask. So what that means is that this model is very disciplined, very strategic, very calculated on who gets what ask and when. So we're not just hitting them with all of those overwhelming upselling as we heard from the feedback. So that's a very quick overview of the long haul model. Thought I would put that out there for anybody who is new. If you want more information, I wrote several blog posts on this. It's on my website, aubreybergauer.com. It's my most popular blog post of all time. So I know for a lot of people, it's been a new framework that's been helpful on this topic of retention. All right, last call for any questions. I'm not seeing anything in the chat. That's okay. Hopefully that means this is all making sense, bouncing around in your brain. I think what we'll do then is we'll wrap it up. We'll call it for today on this topic of retention. I just want to thank everybody who's watching. Again, whether you are watching now live or whether you're watching this online later, I'm really grateful that you're here. I'm really grateful to LinkedIn again for making this content possible to bring it to you, to really emphasize the business side of the arts and how important that is for all of us and the work we are doing off stage. And I mentioned this before that if you are watching this and you haven't seen the previous week's content, I created a hashtag. It's in the description for this video. Hashtag the narrative is changing. So if you click on that, it'll bring up all the posts in this series. Are we able to watch the last 2 week sessions? Yes. Okay, good. I just answered that question. Click on that hashtag. It'll bring it up. Brian says, thank you for attending. And follow me if you're not already. That's the other way to keep up with all of this and make sure you're not missing anything else. There are 7 more weeks of this series. I mentioned this is week 3 of 10. We've got 7 more topics to go. And if you are already following me, I'm told, you can tell me if this works or not for you, but I'm told if you are already following me, there should be a bell on my profile. If you click that bell, then I think that means you get notified of future posts in this series. So somebody told me that from LinkedIn, so you can try that if that works for you. Let me know. I'm curious to hear, because when I view my own profile, I don't see that, obviously. So there we are. Okay, question coming in here. Wondering if you would link to the Duo blog that explored the case study. Yes. Okay, when we get done with this stream live, I will put the link to the blog post in the comments. Great question, Eli. Okay. No other questions I see right now. Okay. So let's see. Next week, just a preview of things to come. Next week, we are covering a very different topic. We are switching from this patron focus we've had the last couple weeks to a more internal look, and we are talking about company culture. So I know some of you are just like really into the topic of company culture. I've been pretty obsessed with it over the last couple years, more so now, as I think it's so critical to how our organizations move forward. And I have an awesome guest next week. I am so stoked for this. I got to tell you, truly a foremost expert on this topic, researcher on this topic, and a best-selling author as well. So I think you're going to love it. That's next week. It's going to be next Tuesday. I'll probably post the stream to my LinkedIn feed probably sometime over the weekend. So you can keep an eye out for that, or again, hit that bell on my profile if it's there so you get notified. Okay, one more time. Share this with others. If you found value in this, please, it would be very beneficial to making sure other people in the field have access to this content. It would be really greatly appreciated. And I just want to thank everybody one more time. Thank you for being here. Thank you to Duolingo for sharing so openly about what they've learned. And again, to the LinkedIn Creator Accelerator Program for their support in making this content possible. So have a great rest of your day, and more to come next week. Bye, everybody.